Hey guys, welcome to episode 113 of CMD Towers, Brews and Builds. I'm MrComboNumber5, and my fellow host has begun his descent into a whispering madness with all the zombie support, BigTuck.
Hello, Mr. Combo. I'm so excited to see you in person again. I have nothing really to talk about major, but I know you do. For those who don't know,
what do I have to talk about?
Mr. Combo just got back from his trip out to Italy. I got to see it all through Instagram. It looked awesome. My personal highlight was you wearing that pork pie hat as much as you could, because it's a great hat. Your outfits were on point.
Fantastic, except people got very confused and thought I was meaning to head to Cuba, because it definitely looked like I was ready for a... It's a little summery.
It was a little tropical,
a little beachy.
Yeah. But my only thing I want to talk about real quick is talk about madness. So yesterday I was really bored. I actually have 6-ish new and updated decks that I just got the cards in for, and I wanted to play them. And I think I'm playing on Sunday maybe, but it's still up in the air. So I was talking with Ross about them. So he was like, "Well, try this," and I did it. So I set up a table, set up 4 pods, and then just played them all against each other by myself.
Insert Owen Wilson. Wow.
It was a nightmare. I think it made me a better player. Some players at the table had some critical misplays around how Wheel of Misfortune works. And also, there was a perplexing chimera on board, which made it very difficult to try to think. What,
wouldn't it be easier just to have 4 windows open on your computer and just do tapped out?
But I don't have them in tapped out. I don't even know if these are just the first time through. I just wanted to see what they were like in real life. I don't know if it's going to be an exercise I'm going to be doing again anytime soon. It was fun in the sense it was like just fun to get the reps in with these. Because, sometimes, like you've talked about, the games go 30 minutes and you don't get to see the deck at all. The game goes 4 hours and you see too much of the deck and never want to play it again. But okay, so I want to hear, this is what I always ask people about their trips, right? I want to hear your star rating out of 5 in half-star increments.
Okay.
That's number 1. I want to hear your peak, your pit.
All right.
And then another thing is, if there was one thing that you could have changed in the trip that was within your realm of control,
okay,
what would you have changed?
So I'm going to start there because this is something that we learned. So, a few of the attractions, you have to get a ticket to enter. The Vatican, Sistine Chapel, Colosseum. Right. And our mindset was like, you should be able to buy the tickets a couple days in advance and you'll be fine. That's not the case. Italy is also not very flexible if you make a mistake on your reservation. And by not very flexible, I'm meaning 0 refunds. So that's the thing that we've learned is triple check when you're doing everything. Because our friend Jared had booked our train tickets on his phone and sent me my deal because he's the one that signed us up for the Europass. And the Europass app punches out to another site that does the seat reservations. Europass said Florence to Rome, XYZ time. For some reason, the website it punched us to booked us on a train from Rome to Florence that day, but we're in Florence.
Oh.
So we show up and they're like, no, this is a ticket to Rome to Florence. And it's like, well, clearly I'm not in Rome right now. I'm here in front of you. And so we basically had to pay a quote-unquote late fee to be able to get our tickets.
Fee or whatever, yeah.
And then they wouldn't refund us our money for our tickets. And then the Sistine Chapel we never got to see because apparently it books like 2 weeks in advance on the tickets.
Oh,
everything else in Rome was a day or 2. This apparently was 2 weeks. But we didn't realize it because we did one of these package deals, book the Colosseum and book the Sistine Chapel, get a 5% discount. So we go ahead, book the Colosseum first. I think we did it on a Thursday. And then it was like, okay, let's do the Vatican. We didn't look at the dates. We just saw Friday, 1 p.m. That was the earliest we could do it. It's like, let's do it. Friday, 1 p.m.
Yeah, right.
Do the Colosseum, no issue. Show up to the Sistine Chapel on Friday. By the way, in case anyone didn't see my Twitter post, we got to see the presidential escort to go meet the Pope at the Vatican, which was pretty insane. What a coincidence.
I
know. Well, and I think there were 75 cars that escorted Biden into the Vatican. It was insane. So anyways,
makes sense.
Show up to the Sistine Chapel after walking around this fucking Vatican because the wall, there's just no shortcuts. Turns out the ticket was actually for yesterday, so November, whatever the hell that would be, 4th.
Oh, the 4th.
Yeah, we were there in October, not November. So that's the thing that we've learned is double and triple check when you do your stuff. Same thing even with we needed the negative COVID test to enter into the country. We did it 48 hours in advance, thought that'd be fine. Apparently they booked up all over the place. We had to hire a private doctor to do our test. So it's just like you can't do stuff just a day or two in advance. Look at that shit.
Yeah, you got to
be
months and months away.
So that is what we would definitely have done different. That was within our power.
Change, yeah.
Now, we'll go back to the beginning, star rating. I'm going to break it up just into the cities. Florence, 5 out of 5. Hands down, I'll be going back. I don't even need to go back and see historical stuff. I just want to go back and walk around and hang out in the city. It is such a relaxed, chill city. Rome, 3.5.
Really?
Food was great. The historical aspect, I mean, I literally saw something, Tuck, that was built in 800 BC. That is almost 3,000 years ago, and this thing is still standing. And so it was absolutely phenomenal. But the city is a cesspool. It's dirty. It smells. It reminds me of Beijing.
Oh, gross.
God. Yeah. And like, you know how sometimes you just walk down Beijing and you smell that smell and you're like, that smells like rotten fat and something else. Like, I want to throw up.
Open air markets.
Yeah, so that's why I'd give it 3.5. And I even told our friend that when I go back over with my fiance, which will be probably that time wife, we'll do Rome, but we're gonna do it to where it's like we get in at 6 a.m., we just do a long day, and then we leave late that night. There's a place, if you ever go to Rome, La Carbonara, best carbonara you will ever eat. It was phenomenal. So there are some spots I want to go back and visit because the food was so good and the history was great. But there's no reason to spend multiple days in Rome.
How long did you spend? Like 2 days?
Yeah, we spent 2 days. Got there Thursday, left on a Saturday.
And you were like, and by the end of Friday, you were like, I'm ready to go.
Well, that and Rome, we didn't realize, is actually now the biggest city per capita in Europe, the largest. Now that London has Brexited. And with that, we didn't realize that it's a actually very wide city as well. So Florence, for example, we could walk from our apartment in the southeast corner to the train station in the northwest corner of the city in no longer than 20 minutes. You know, it's a very walkable city. Rome, we would walk 20 minutes and maybe be halfway to the next spot. Like, we legitimately had to take a cab from our apartment to the Vatican because it was like 4 or 5 miles, which isn't awful. I mean, you could do that in an hour and a half if it's a straight shot. But Rome, there's so many turns and twists.
You got to wind around.
It's going to be like 3 hours.
And also, to your point, when you're on vacation, like, that's fine if you live here, if you live there, right? You're like, I guess I just have to walk an hour to get to this place, right? When you're on vacation, you don't want to burn a quarter of the day or whatever just walking around, right?
And normally we were already doing 15 to 25 miles a day, so like that without doing that. So it's like we would have been doing 30 to 40 miles a day if we were walking all over Rome.
Right.
So that's why Rome gets 3.5. And then the last thing would be Pisa. Pisa's a 1-star. Literally, the only thing to see there is the Leaning Tower, and that's it.
Oh, gotcha.
They don't have any cool food. There's nothing. I mean, we even took because there was literally so little to do there. We actually took the train further west, went to the coast, got to look at the Mediterranean, which was really cool. But that was it. And then even the place that we ate at, it was a food boat. And it was fine. It was like some fresh fried squid and octopus. But at the end of the day, Pisa and that stuff, it's a day trip, nothing like that. But Florence.
Who don't need to book your trip around it.
Exactly. So that's the star ratings. Now, if I had to give you what my peak and what my low was from an experience perspective, I would say the low was probably not being able to see and go into the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican Museum. Yeah. That kind of sucks. And then I would also say another low would be, man, that is so. I mean, because there really just wasn't that many lows.
I mean, that's fine. Yeah. Like, you can have one pit,
I guess
right?
that's it.
That's
but
it.
Gosh, from a ceiling perspective,
what's the one thing that was the best?
Okay, I'll tell you the one thing that took my breath away. We went up into the Basilica of, what is it? Saint Andrew?
Orzhov? An Orzhov Basilica, if you will?
Possibly. It's the Basilica above the Vatican. I'm drawing a blank on it's St. Peters Basilica. There we go. We went up at that, and so you're looking down into the Vatican Church, and it's just like, there's some cool stuff down there. But, we go up, beautiful view. As we go down, you have to go through the church to exit. So it's like, all right, let's go check it out. Tuck, have you ever been to the Vatican? I know you went to Jerusalem.
I've never been to Italy.
Okay. So, technically Vatican's its own country, but that's fine. It's fine.
Okay, all right. So I'm surprised. I actually thought you were gonna come with like a baguette and like a plate of pasta. You already got your Italian soda. I thought you were gonna be like buongiorno, mi amigo, or whatever. Like I thought you were gonna be like, when someone comes back from like studying abroad and they're like, oh yeah, we took the tube. Sorry, that's the subway in London.
No, I've just been drinking Chianti since I've been back. Like I had a bottle last night. Had it with some shitty pizza. Spent an hour today making fresh pasta for dinner tonight. But Tuck, if you have a chance in your life, and I would say this to anyone, whether you're religious or not, you need to walk the floor of the Vatican. So a lot of times, Tuck, when I imagine a big cathedral or church, and I've been in Notre Dame, a lot of it is paintings. It's mosaics.
Right.
Vatican was 90% carved statues. Everywhere.
Oh, sure,
And literally, like, the church was so massive, sideways, one into another, it had to almost be a football field. It was almost 100 yards wide, couple hundred yards deep, just art everywhere. And, they actually had people in there praying and people going and doing confessionals.
It's a live church as well, right?
Yeah. And so that's really probably the thing that both me and our friend, we just were looking around like, oh my God, I cannot believe this. So that's
it's the power of history. Yeah, I got you.
So that would be and of course, people, the food's awesome. Yeah. The pizza over there, people will love this. If you eat the right Italian style crust, the way that it's supposed to be made, they say, oh yeah, it's very common for an Italian to have maybe 1.5 pizzas for lunch. Just saying, if an Italian can eat a whole pizza, I'm down.
Yeah, I could eat 5. If they're only on 2, those are rookie numbers. Well, that's awesome. Yep. Like, I'm so glad you had a great time out there, especially with like how uncertain travel is and all that shit. So
absolutely.
I'm glad you're back because, boy, I need your help.
I'm glad I'm back too. Let me tell you, the one thing I did miss was my bed. The bed in Florence was fine, but there was no air conditioner in the room, so I'd get really hot and sweaty, and then that sweat would make the bed cold. It was very uncomfortable. And then Rome, they just took 2 twins and smashed them together. So both me and our friend kept rolling into the seam every night and waking up like half swallowed by this bed.
Oh, God.
So I was very thankful for that. But I will put this out there for the collective. If any of you guys have ever thought about international travel or have any questions, feel free to hit me up in Discord or on Twitter. I'm always happy to share the different tips and stuff. Like a perfect example is this trip. I think lodging and airfare, flying Premier on Delta, so that's the old first class. I think we maybe spent $1,500 round trip.
Wow.
And the average meal, Tuck, was €45. That was a bottle of wine, 2 bottles of water, like the big 750s, and each of us getting our own entree. Like, very affordable. Right. The food was great.
Very reasonable.
It doesn't have to be $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 when you think of an international trip. You can do it on a budget.
I feel like Italy, if you want to go there and blow $5,000, I'm sure you could find a way to do it.
Go to Milan and but, just hang out with all the fucking models that don't eat any of the delicious food.
Yeah, exactly. They just starve themselves. Well, I'm so glad you made it safe. I'm so glad that I was worried that your pit was like, we twisted an ankle and had missed out on a day. So safe travels, safe everything there.
No, the worst part was there was one day we stayed up drinking 3 or 4 bottles of wine, eating edibles because they just sell weed on the street there till like 3:30 in the morning, and we had to be up at like 7. So that was awful. But
well,
other than that, if you guys want to support CMD Tower and all the content we put out, head over to our Patreon.
In our future international travel.
Yes. Well, hell, I hit up people on Twitter to see if there's anywhere in Florence or Italy I should have known about magic. I didn't hear from anyone. So I would love to do a magic fest in another country.
Ooh,
that would be fun. So you guys should head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/CMD Tower. We have tiers starting at $1, going up from there, 4 different levels. the big hot item right now, we're constantly adding things to our Patron. Like, over the summer, we decided to become a patron ourselves of RK Post. And then as he sends out his tokens, we'll actually share those tokens with the collective, depending on your tier. And also the one that everyone's excited about, and you might have saw the picture on Twitter, the CMD Tower holiday sweater is reality.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Tuck, it's insanely soft. It washed great, washed it on cold, low tumble, and then just hung dry. It didn't shrink at all. So we're going to have very limited supply. I bring this up because if you were a patron, and let's just say by Thanksgiving, if you're a patron by Thanksgiving, you will get A, early access to pre-order your sweater, and B, a $20 discount. These sweaters are normally going to go for $50 because of the high quality cotton that we have in them. If you're a patron, though, you're going to get it for $30. So we're going to do a limited time discount, for the people that want to pre-order it. But that gives you a big incentive. Like, you could join our Patron for $1, get into the Discord, talk with the legends like Hamburger Demon Poop and MTG Lord of Leaves, but then also save $20 on a sweater that you're probably going to buy anyways. And now you're part of a community, or even, the $5 to where we're going to give you some additional swag. So there are some benefits to signing up and getting that initial discount because you get more out of it. Because that's really what we're here for. We're not here to make money. We're here to enable the community and constantly improve the content we put out. Part of those rewards, though, it's pretty exciting as we do patron announcements on Brews and Builds when someone joins. Ooh. And we do have a new patron.
Hooray!
Huzzah!
And I think I know who you're talking about. I'll look up the Discord name for everyone else out there.
So, the actual, and this name is badass. The Usurper King Richard.
Ah, yes. You can find him as King Rickers on our Discord.
Nice.
So he's already in there mixing it up, chopping it up with the best of them.
Thank you for being a BigTuck brew buddy.
Whoa,
definitely
nice.
Love to grow the community, and now that I'm back from Italy, I'll be able to send you out your stuff. So, huzzah. Now, if you are an existing patron like King Richard, and maybe you want to recommend someone join the collective, have them message us on Patreon when they join. If they let us know that some existing member referred them to our patron community, we'll send you something just as a thank you. It could be some product. It could be a signed card. Just kind of depends on what your collective recruit initiated. Now, we do have a store, so if Patreon isn't really your jam, you're like, F community, I hate this stuff. I want to talk to as few people as possible. I get it. I'm like that at times. So you could get your own sweater, playmat, any of the CMD Tower branded products at cmdtower.com/merch. Tons of products on there. Obviously, we're going to keep growing it. Hopefully, we'll be having our foil new playmats with some amazing Brews and Builds art coming in the next 3 to 4 months. So yeah, just head over there. Now, we have to give a big thank you to our audio and video editor @_tcoats. Tyler does all the editing for Brews and Builds. And, from YouTube to the audio to the sound effects, he really puts in a lot of effort and energy to this. So make sure you follow, make sure you subscribe and sharing all this content so that way we can grow the collective. But if you have any feedback, let us know. We're always looking to improve. Now, Brews and Builds is our deck tech series. Since we conquered the path to 32 and the 12 themes of EDH decks, we have moved on to the classic brew from day one B&B with a traditional episode. See, look at that. I'm already starting to try to Italianize everything.
Yeah, exactly. You're getting in there.
Oh, we describe the blue. We got the decks that symbol the beer is blued. So we broke it down into 4 different categories. The first one's ramp and setting your board state. We correlate that to grain.
And grain are the foundation of every beer. They include both base malts and specialty malts, usually in a 60-40 ratio. This helps with the color, the taste, and most importantly, the alcohol content of the beer. Decks always need ways to grow, stabilize, and ramp into bigger threats. And just like a grain profile, they're usually a mix of staples and specialty cards.
And then we have how does your board interact with all of your opponents? We call that hops.
And hops give the beer its patented bitterness and herbal floral flavors. They grow in a variety of strands and help distinguish subcategories like IPAs. Our hop choices help clear and interact with the board so your deck can ultimately do what it wants.
And then how does the deck actually close out and win the game? That's called yeast.
And yeasts are living microorganisms that eat the sugar from the grain and poop out alcohol and CO2. Without yeast, you'd be drinking flat sugar water. And without yeast cards, your deck wouldn't meet the goal of actually winning the game.
And then we have shenanigans. These can be pet cards, synergies, alter the broods. It is a mill card that are in the deck that are just kind of fun. We call that spice.
It was in here and got cut. Not every beer has them, but spices and other additives help separate normal stock beer from a specialty one. It could be the pepper that turns a stout into jalapeno stout, or the addition of hops that turn IPA into a double IPA. Not every deck has something that makes it pop, but if it does, this is where we generally talk about it.
Do you even mill, bro?
Do you even
Then we have a bottle capping, where it's going to be BigTucks and I's, cuts and adds into the deck. They're going to be under $5, under a 50 piece, and a no budget lottery ticket card. The only restriction is no mana, only lands. So without further ado, let's get brewing. I guess BigTuck wanted some help with mill, and he knows that I kind of, get a little thick.
You get a little juicy about it.
When it comes to mill. So we're talking about Mirko Voss, the deck drinker.
Yes, this was maybe my third deck I ever built. It's been tapped out for 5 years. If you don't know the boy, Mirko Voss, Mindreaker, is a 2/4 legendary creature vampire, a rare, that for 3 colorless and dimir, that's a blue and a black. He is a flyer that has, whenever he deals combat damage to a player, that player reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal 4 land cards, then put those cards into their graveyard. So, I chose this deck to talk about because it's one of the few ones that I have in my collection that we have not yet discussed. And B, it's been a deck that I've had for so long. I really used to enjoy playing this. And the last few times I've tried it out, it's just kind of been a little flat. I don't know if it's just because mill's not that much of an archetype or it's gone too far in one direction. I think dimir is one of my favorite color pairings. It's like dimir and Rakdos in 2 colors are the ones I like the most. Because I think it gives you a lot of fun mechanics. I think it gives you a lot of fun cards to play around with. But this is just a deck that I have started to kind of lose some enjoyment out of. And actually, I was going to, now that I'm away from the Kansas City area, my end goal of this was, do I keep this deck or do I strip it for parts for potentially a rogue build, which I've always wanted to do, but Squee McGee had that pretty much on lockdown from the jump.
Yep.
So as it turns out, because of my card hoarding, I actually was able to completely build a rogues deck with the pre-con and cards I'd line around. And the only thing I would need out of this would literally be lands.
Wow.
So I'm keeping it. But MrCombo, you've seen this deck in action. I know you like your mills. What do you think about the archetype? What do you think? What have you thought about the deck when you've seen it? I think Sir Nathan has a similar build.
He has a Phanex deck.
Maybe, or it's a Phanex. Yeah. So what do you think about dimir mill? What do you think about this deck when you've seen it out in the wild?
Well, one thing to clarify, I think it's kind of bullshit, just frankly, that Mirko Voss didn't get invited to this wedding on Innistrad. I get it, he's on Ravnica, but you know what? Why don't we make a portal and go over in the multiverse and pull Mirko Voss over? That's kind of nonsense. The last time
no invite to him.
Yeah, no invite. Last time we saw him, it was like, hey, go look at the maze. Go figure that out for us. And then we haven't seen him since. So nice. That's some nonsense. Number 2, I have seen this deck, whether it be you or other people in the wild. I feel this has not stood well the test of time. This reads very similar to like when we did my Aloro deck of like, at the time it made a lot of sense, but like you're trying to do too much. I'm trying to mill me, I'm trying to mill you, I'm trying to pull creatures from my yard specifically, your yard specifically, spells from mine, spells from yours. There's a lot of like your opponent or there's not a lot of just put a creature from a thing or play a spell from a graveyard. So I feel like maybe we're trying to go in too many directions. And I have some recommendations on the bottle capping that I actually think will take the deck in a direction that will better match your new play group, very battle cruisery. Because I think there is a version of this dimir build with Mirko Voss where you're living in the red zone as a whole. You're not ever really just trying to generic mill.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's honestly one of the reasons why the Rogues was so much more appealing to me, at least like on the sense, because it's still an aggressive deck. You're still dealing damage. I think you agree that like one of the hardest things with mill is that instead of dealing with 3 players with 40 life, you're dealing with 3 players with effectively 100 in some shape or form, right?
Well, Yeah, I mean,
or 97 or
yeah,
whatever it is.
Well, I was about to say, because I usually kind of look at it this way. If you're a mill player, you're going to have to mill roughly 210 cards. About 70 from each player is probably what you're going to have to do.
That's probably about right, yeah.
Versus the life loss, you're absolutely right. You may only have to be responsible for 30, depending on what your opponents are doing. But not many. It's going to be very unlikely that you sit down at the table with another mill player that's their mill strategy is going to be advantageous for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm excited to get a little more combat focused. Just going through some stats here. The color pie is pretty good, especially for having 8 islands and 8 swamps completely by accident there. Again, this was done way before we even looked at this sort of thing. Curve 3-5, which is okay-ish. And then this build of the deck is somewhere in the 370 to 380 range. I don't really know if there's anything in here with foils or anything like that. I don't keep track of that because I'm too lazy. And I think there's a few cards in here that really pump that up. So I've seen these decks be built for $50, but not this one in particular.
Yeah.
But it's also weird because this has been a deck I've had for so long. Like when I've had good utility cards, I'm like, oh, I'm going to put this blue or black utility card into here just because I know it needs an upgrade or whatever.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing when it comes to the pricing is I actually think it's going to be a big challenge to build a good mill deck for under probably $200 now, because it seems like once Broodvac got printed, it's like all the mill cards just spiked. I mean, hell, Alter the Brood went from like a $1.50 card to a $5-6 card. So I think it actually is going to be a bigger challenge. But I think there are some components in here. I think you're going to see a backup commander that we might talk about later that could give you that mill budget deck. I just think if you're trying to do Mirko Voss, Broodvac, Phanex, I just think Phanex might be easy because you do like Draft Shaft for all the creatures.
Yeah, right. Just creatures. Yeah.
But I think some of these other ones, it's a little bit harder because some of those mill cards are just hella expensive.
And the last thing I'll say is that this deck is dominated by its hops with a 32 count compared to the 14 grain, the 15 yeast, and the 4 spice.
The 32 count.
It's a hop. 32 count. Oh my God! Mirko Voss comes in with a chair. Give it the 32 count.
Oh, with that, let's get into the grade section, and BigTuck start us off. Not a lot of flavor here, so where are you going?
I think we'll have a couple here. The first one, though, I want to give you a quick briefing about what the mission is. You didn't go with this? Really?
No, of course not.
What? Okay, so mission briefing. It's a rare from Ravnica Allegiance. Double blue for an instant. Surveil 2. Then choose an instant or sorcery card in your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. If this card would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile instead. And then to Surveil, leave the top 2 cards of your library. Put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest on top of your library in any order. I love the Surveil mechanic. It's one of my favorite keyworded things, although it does suffer from my also favorite thing to rant on, that it came out in one set, and we don't think I've had a single card yet that has Surveil on it. And I think this card's really strong, right? I think the problem can come in where there are only a handful of cards that I really want to cast, but there are some instants and sorceries here that are very strong, which you want to get multiple casting out of. So Mission Briefing, for me, lets you filter off the top of the deck, and then late game lets you play one of the cards to hopefully push the game out, maybe one of your yeast, maybe a pretty spicy hop, something along those lines, all for 2 blue mana.
Sure. I think the biggest issue I have with Mission... Now, I think it's an okay card. I think my biggest issue with it, though, with your deck is your commander doesn't mill you. And if you actually look at a lot of your good cards in your deck, a lot of them don't mill you. So I'm not really... A lot of your cards in here where it's like you're specifically pulling from your graveyard, I just don't know how... and maybe you could tell me if I'm wrong, but I just don't know how impactful they're truly going to be unless you just get the once in a blue moon where, this 9-drop sorcery's in here. I can now reuse it again.
Yeah, there's a lot of instances of sorceries in here, so that's why I've kind of kept... that's why I've really kept Mission Briefing in, just because sometimes you need a ponder, sometimes you need a brainstorm, something like those lines. But you're not wrong there. I think there is a bad dichotomy between my and other people's graveyards.
All right. Well, my first one, I know you're matched on. It's an enchantment that we have to pay life to use.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. Hold on. Let me get it's been so long that I got to make sure I got the shaker.
3, 2, 1.
Unfulfilled desires.
Colorless dimir enchantment. Suck it.
Good. I'm glad. This is a piece of Magic history. For 1 colorless and 1 life, draw a card, then choose and discard a card. And I've already rolled up the name. We have Joyer the Get To, who for some reason sounds a little bit like this. Like a day from night. Speaking of POTUS, like a day from night, I'll live my life apart from you, just glimmering you across the sky. Because you cannot change, my dear, and nor can I. We will build this wall. And that's our old pal Trump from the love song of Night and Day.
Well, there we go. So this card kind of can make your mission briefing work because of the pay a life, draw a card, then discard a card. So you can kind of set up your own graveyard. But honestly, I'm more just looking at this as this is how dimir draws cards. You didn't want to go the standard, necropotence route, which would just be better than this. And that's fine. So it's keeping you on flavor, and you are occasionally getting stuff in your yard that you maybe can recur later. But I just look at this as, hey, I'm going to pay a life and a mana, and I'm going to net 0 a card, but I can get to something I actually want.
This was part of my giant Phyrexian Arena purge that I went through over the last couple months, and just cut out there. The one thing with Necropotence that is tough is that if you do have to discard cards, it does exile them. So that's started to bite me in the ass a couple times. So I'm a little more wary on that. I do think that Necropotence would be really good in this deck, especially if you cut out all the stuff that cares about my own graveyard.
Yeah, but here's the thing is I don't actually see you discarding any cards. Like almost everything in here, you take it from the top of your library.
The library, yeah.
Which you wouldn't be you wouldn't be exiled. And you wouldn't have Unfulfilled Desires in the deck, which would be the one discard one I actually see in here.
The one that you run the most. Yeah, I mean, I got a Necro lighting around, so maybe it'll be slotted in here.
There you go. All right, Tuck. Well, what's your last one?
All right, another Surveil card. This one is a Sign in Blood or a Read the Bones, but instead I like it because it looks like the Matrix. We were talking about Notion Rain. So colorless dimir, that's a blue and black. Rain. You can Surveil 2, then draw 2, and then it deals damage to you. And we do have a little bit of flavor text here from our old pal Tomio. This one's pretty good. The Sorceress Supreme. Now, it's been a while, so let me think through this and find the card again. City air is a constant drizzle of private thoughts. I'm Tilda Swinton. So, this again was just kind of more of like a spice pick. I just like it because I like Surveil a lot. And you can run Read the Bones or whatever in any other deck. And more importantly, I like the rain because it looks like the Matrix coming down. It's like little words and little bubbles. So a little bit of a flavor pick. But again, if you do find those cards to bin, you can pull them back with like Mission Briefing and maybe a couple other things, which is why this is in there for me over just your bog standard pay 3, pay 2, life draw 2.
But I like this better than those.
Really? Okay. Because you can bin from the Surveil?
Yes.
Yeah.
So anything that's going to be a scry or Surveil and then the number, and then you get to draw whatever that scry or Surveil is. To me, that's essentially 3 mana. You're kind of getting to look at 4 cards. And that's a great rate for me because that's less than 1 mana per card that you got to see. So Notion Rain, I'm all about it because it might be something that it's early game, you need the lands. Okay, 9 drop, goodbye. I'll keep the Soul Ring there and maybe I get lucky on the next one, or the vice versa at the late game. I could give a flip less on anything 4 mana or less. So bend both of those because I literally don't need them. I'm looking for gas, and Notion Rain can absolutely do it.
I just wish there was more Surveil. Like if I could turn this into a Surveil deck, I'd do it in a heartbeat, but there's like 20 cards that have it on and half of them are unplayable.
Hey, I was able to build the dungeon deck somehow. You could build a Surveil deck.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, I got 2 left.
You got 2 left.
My second one, it's very vanilla. Actually, both of these are very vanilla. But I wanted to bring them up because I think it's always important when we have these top-down commanders. Lightninggreaves, I feel like you really need that with these kind of commanders.
You need it so bad.
Especially the fact that he's 5 mana. So 2 colorless, artifact equipment, uncommon. Wow, it's like $6. Good lord.
Still? It just got reprinted, too.
And it states, equipped creature has Hasten Shroud, equipped for 0, and there is text on this particular one.
This is from a card that we might be talking about later, potentially, from Ashok, who sounds oddly like a choir boy.
After lightning struck the cliffs, the one became iron. The iron became steel. And the steel became Greaves. The lightning never left. See, I'm the choir boy that likes to rebel.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He's like listening to whatever trip hop that the kids are listening to in the back.
You say trip hop?
I don't know, man. It's something. It's a real thing.
So anyways, Lightninggreaves, a very vanilla card.
Yeah.
I've just actually gotten in a habit, though, of actually started cutting it from decks. Because I realize I don't actually need it for my commander. Like, my commander is a top-down, but they are not the threat. It's everything else that's the threat. But with stuff like Mirko Voss, he is a threat. So people will try to kill him as quickly and as often as possible. So you do need a Lightninggreaves. You do need a Swiftfoot Boots. You need those basic things to try to protect these commanders, especially because I don't think Tuck wants to pay 5, then 7, then 9 to finally get to use his guy.
That's a huge problem in this deck, too. It's just like running out of ways to recast Mirko because he is so critical to the deck's theme, which is another reason why I'm like,
yeah, I feel you.
Not sure. I agree with you. I'm not sure if it holds up quite as much as it should.
And then my last one is Preordain, and it kind of goes to what we just talked about with Notion Rain. So single blue sorcery, it's a common. You get it for 50 cents. Scry 2, then draw a card. I'm here for anything that we get to kind of look through the tops and then kind of almost stack how we want to draw. So this is great. I think it's great for this deck because also if you do lean more into the I want to mill myself because I'm trying to cheat things from the graveyard, the scrying and the Surveil are going to be very key to that.
For sure. What's your power ranking between these three? Brainstorm, Ponder, Preordain.
Well, Brainstorm will always be number one.
Right.
And then I would probably go... I would go personally Ponder, then Preordain, just because you know me, I'm very anti, discarding cards. I don't like to do that. And so the fact that I just get to basically reorder the top 3, and then I could potentially shuffle if I didn't even like them, I'm not actually losing any cards.
Yeah, I agree with that full-heartedly. I think that's the big win with Ponder. Some people argue it's better than Brainstorm for that exact same reason. I think those people are insane.
That's absolutely insane. It's instant, and it doesn't even matter the 3. You could pick up 3 gas cards and then put your hand on top of the library.
Right, yeah.
It's so good. Anyways.
I don't know. People are morons.
They are morons.
What are you going to do?
Well, guys, that's going to wrap up the grain section, and now we're going to head over to the hot profile, and I'll kick this off with a card.
There's a lot of options here.
Lots of options, and I know Tuck didn't pick this one because it's definitely Ashok bait for me. We are talking Ashok Dreamrender, one of my favorite Planeswalker characters in all of Magic.
So good.
I didn't really like the whole Theros Beyond Death story, the little bit that I heard, but Ashok has always been very interesting. So, colorless and then dimir, so you have the option of paying any combination of blue and black as long as it equals 2. Legendary Planeswalker Ashok, uncommon from War, comes in with 5 loyalty. -1. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, then exile each opponent's graveyard. Amazing, especially when you're in a mill deck.
Strong.
Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library. Backbreaking, and it comes in for about $1.
Strong.
$1.17.
Yeah. It is bonkers. I did get in this argument with Sir Nathan as well about his mill deck, where he doesn't run this because it exiles the graveyards, which I can kind of see. But I think this versus, Leyline of the Void or whatever, this one you can choose, right? It's good enough. I feel like, to your point, Ashok is good enough to run just for its static ability. That's strong enough to cut off fetch lands and tutors and everything else. And then if you're at a point where it's these graveyards are humongous and I don't want anything out of them, you can always do the -1 whenever you want, right?
Yeah, I think the thing that, and it maybe hasn't bitten Sir Nathan yet in the butt, I know it bit me in the butt with Terrifying Tyler, is, I run Alter the Bird in so many decks, and I'm like, yeah, the incremental mill.
Oh, yeah.
His Marin deck just completely, is oh, yeah, bring it on, and I was doing it, and I milled
I'll take it every time.
Over half of his deck, but then it was oh, and now I win, and it's oh shit,
right? Yeah.
This would have been amazing to get rid of your graveyard when I did it. So I do think there are times maybe you don't want a static rest in peace effect, but if you can kind of on demand Bojuka Bog or Bojuka Bog all of your opponents, I think that's extremely powerful. Plus, in this, you have the flexibility, Tuck, depending on the direction you take the deck. If you stay more where I think you should do the opponent focus, You obviously can pick any of your opponents to mill 4, but if you are trying to still have it be a you focus, you can always, and that's the cool thing about Ashok Dreamrender, mill yourself 4, but then all of your opponents still get their graveyards exiled. So it literally just enhances you and hurts them.
That is going to play so well into my first hot pick as well.
Ooh, what is it?
Ooh. It's a Monarch card. I put these into almost every deck. This happens to be the blue one that I chose for this because it works as well. Court of Cunning. Always good. So colorless double blue for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. Worth it on its own. If the rest of it was blank, here we are. But it does say at the beginning of your upkeep, any number of target players, to your point, each mill 2 cards. If you're the Monarch, instead, each of those players mill 10 cards. Or 10 cards instead is how it's worded. And we do have a little bit of flavor text here. Being read off by Prokipios, Astronomer Meltus. Your old pal, Mr. Goldblum. A throne built on wisdom cannot be toppled. I saw an ad recently for apartments. I remember before we went and saw Jurassic Park, there's a good Jeff Goldblum thing that you thought was hysterical where he's like, bye-bye, with the things. Nailed it. He's a great guy. So I think a key part of this is A, it's mill, A, it's Monarch, but to your point, it's any player, right? Yep. So you can always choose yourself if you're trying to build your graveyard out a little bit. So even if that's not the direction this deck wants to go, which I think even with my cuts that I have, that's how it's going to go, is more opponents, less me. Yep. Even then, you can still choose anyone, and milling 2 is fine. Milling 10 is a bunch. Mm-hmm. Now, it's just a matter of fact of keeping the Monarch until your upkeep, which in this deck is probably not very likely.
Yeah, and actually, the way I look at these Court of Monarch cards, you need to run it in a deck if you're comfortable never having the Monarch. You know what? Whatever its other thing is, would you pay that for whatever its mana cost is? So basically, Tuck, imagine the thing's blank. At the beginning of your upkeep, any number of target players each mill 2 cards. Would you put that in your deck for 3 mana? This particular one. If the answer is no, then I don't know if it actually has a home in the deck. And that's only because you like the Monarch mechanic, but I don't think you're ever going to have the Monarch.
I will say the one thing that does... That's a good point. I'd probably still keep it in because effectively this also says draw a card, right? Like pay 3 mana, draw a card, then the 2. So whatever. But the fact that I'm playing an aggressive commander is going to make me at least be able to get the Monarch back at some point to draw another card off it. But if it's going to your point, if it's lasting to the upkeep of the next turn, that's a much bigger and different question.
Yeah, and you are right. You are going to be living in the red zone, but I think the thing you then have to focus on is most of your combat-centered mill things. It's the player that's being dealt damage. So then you have to figure out, are you wanting the Monarch mechanic to determine who you're milling?
Oh,
because what if it's like, man, I want that Monarch because I'm Tuck and I love it, but I could literally swing and probably get this person to almost dead. Do I do that and try to get this game moving? That's where I think you would then have to struggle. For me, I don't think I run this particular one in my Oloro deck. I might because of the Monarch thing, and I'm always gaining life and stuff. But the black one, I run in my Shirai deck, and I'm like, hey, if I never am the Monarch, cool with me. I'm good with the other one.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely.
All right. My next one works well if you decide you want to mill yourself, but it's not just determined about you, because it is a doppelganger for the table. We are talking Dimir Doppelganger, colorless Dimir, creature shapeshifter rare. It's a 0/2 for about $1. Its activated ability is a colorless Dimir. Exile target creature card from a graveyard. So do it for you, do it for your opponents, and Dimir Doppelganger becomes a copy of that card, except it has this ability. Now, one key thing here is it will have the name of that card, so you can't, if someone milled a Mirko Voss or it died, you couldn't have this become a Mirko Voss and then your Mirko Voss out, because that would be the legendary rule. But to basically snipe exile stuff, the best thing from your opponent's graveyards for 3 mana, that's where it's okay to mill those Marin players and not have a way to exile their graveyard as a whole. Right. So it's like, oh, you're going to target your Woodfall combo, 3 mana. No, you're not.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I don't run a lot of targeted exile from graveyard. I think every deck needs it. And this one being repeatable, that does play into the theme, is very strong, especially for $1 or whatever it looks out to be. And there is a little bit of flavor text that you did try to weasel through. And this is from another great one that you hate because you don't know the frame of reference. Yora Academy researcher, aka Sarah Goldfarb from Requiem for a Dream, which is the old lady on meth.
Fear not. Your life will not go unlived.
Yeah.
Hit me that sweet pipe, baby.
I was going to say, I need a lot more meth.
Anyways, this card's bananas. But once again, the nice thing about it is you can leave it in your deck, Tuck, even if you transform it and get rid of all the I care about my graveyard and it's only my opponent's graveyard stuff. This still works great. So I think this is a card, no matter what direction you take the deck, it will have a home.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, what's your next one?
So I'm a sucker for Surveil, and honestly, whenever I play this, I usually forget that it's even on the card because I mostly just run it as very efficient creature removal sometimes. So for that, you got to pay the price of fame. So 3 colorless and a black for this uncommon. It's an instant. It costs 2 less to cast if it targets a legendary creature.
Sounds like murder's better.
Destroy target creature, incorrect. Destroy target creature, and then also it has the oft-forgotten Surveil 2 at the bottom of it. So for me, it's 1 more mana than murder at instant speed that sometimes could cost 1 less as murder. We're playing in a format where legendary creatures are running rampant. There's always going to be a commander that you're going to want to blast into the nether realm. And the fact that you also get to do the Surveil, get to see your 4 cards potentially, or well, rather you get to see 2 in this phase. But the fact that you can kind of figure out if you want to pull something from your graveyard, figure out what you want to do on your next turn, that's why I think Price of Fame is a real good inclusion in this deck.
I don't like it.
You don't like this?
It's subjectively and that's why I said
1 mana more.
1 mana more murder for Surveil 2. I don't know. I just, once again, I don't know how, like, if your deck isn't really focused on your graveyard, the Surveil thing's just cute. Scry is just that much better because you only want stuff in your graveyard if you have consistent ways to pull that stuff out. So Surveil is just you.
But we always talk about
you're just pigeonholing a mechanic there's better.
But if murder cost 1 more and also let you scry 2 or Surveil 2, I guarantee you would play.
No, I wouldn't. Because there are more expensive murders that also add on effects, and I don't run them.
Sure, Grisly Spectacle.
Yeah, you have to have that sweet space of it's just costs just enough, and it's just universal, and it's just cheap enough. And I think this is just a little too cute just for Surveil 2.
But for 2 mana to blow up a commander at instant speed and then you Surveil?
Think of
the possibilities.
But that's so... How bad are you going to feel when you waste 2 mana to blow up... Watch
Redeemed.
Yeah, Reese the Redeemed. Watch all the legends, the commanders are all indestructible. And it's like, I guess I paid 2 mana to Surveil 2.
Little 2. It's not a bad rate. I think the argument can be made. I'm a big fan of this. And it's even better because it's already in the other pre-con, so I don't even need to buy another copy.
Gosh.
Although I gladly would.
Well, my last one is a bulk rare at 30 cents. This is a sorcery, and it deals with my graveyard and my opponent's graveyards. So we are talking Spell Twine. 5 colorless blue sorcery. Exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard and target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard. Copy those cards, cast the copies if able without paying their mana cost, and then you exile Spell Twine. So here's a big thing, though, because you guys have heard me many, many times in the past with the Primordials. I do not like having to rely on other people's graveyards to have stuff to do.
Sure.
Here's where I think this card is fine. It is overcosted, but we did talk about mission briefing earlier. 2 mana, Surveil, have the option to pay the CMC of a instant or sorcery from your graveyard. Well, I'm going to think, other than, Tuck's very example, which would just be sad, where you do that for Preordain or Brainstorm. Yeah. Hopefully you're doing it for Diabolic Tutor or maybe some of the things in the Yeast package that probably cost close to 6 mana or more. So I'm okay with this, even if it just hits you. Well, did I get my... I know you're not talking about it. Cyclonic Rift back. Great. I saved some mana. But The other side is that you are in a mill deck. You are milling your opponents a ton. And so I think you're not going to whiff as frequently on your opponents. Now, you're not going to get game breakers, but if you get a Kadama's Reach from one person and then you bounced all of your opponent's non-land stuff, I'd do that for 6 mana.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why Spell Twine is really strong. Again, it doesn't get your Expropriates of the world and that sort of thing that get exiled, but still, if you need a board wipe or something and someone's already blown it, that's why I think this card, even though it is definitely overcosted, I think it does play into the mid and the late game.
I would like to point out that you're in a mill deck, so most likely you're going to make someone mill Expropriate, and so you would be able to cast it.
Oh, there it is. See, I don't know this Expropriate tech because I still don't own one, thank God.
Oh yeah, I love in my Joda deck milling my Expropriate, then casting Mnemonic Delusion to do it 3 times. Ah, beautiful.
3 times in a row. Perfect. I'm just trying to help you. I'm just giving you a taste.
All right, Tuck. Well, what's your last hop card?
If this card was a legendary card, I would swap it out no matter what into the commander. It's so much better. It's so much stronger, and it's terrifying. I've only been on the receiving end of this card, and it always feels bad. So Sire of Stagnation. Woof. 4 colorless Dimir for 5/7 creature Eldrazi. That's a mythic. About $4 with the Void. When a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, that player exiles the top 2, and then you draw 2. So this is also a little bit of thing here, which is another, thank God we can get these out of the way. Yold Professor of Crypto Religiosity, which is the Oprah man from Saturday Night Live. Well, you were just in the land of opera. Do you want to give this a shot?
I was?
Yeah, Italy?
I'm pretty sure opera is more like French.
No, there's a lot. Okay, there's a lot of German.
And no, absolutely. Right, I did choir boy because I was in the Vatican. Now you have to be opera man because of the rules.
They can't break them. As the great scourge passed by, Zendikar shivered, then laid silent. This card's really good, as it turns out. There's very few cards I have in here that I want to mill and then reanimate, right? There's a couple we might be talking about later. This is like, for my money, the best thing that you could do, right? Like turn 1 Entomb, turn 2 Animate Dead. It's, again, Magic Christmas Land. I'm well aware of that. But the fact that even when you hardcast it, it's still a 5/7. It punishes for any land drop. So adios Landfall decks, adios Windgrace decks. It's very, very strong. I think if it just was Exile 2, I wouldn't be as hot on it. But the fact that it also draws you 2 is just so, so strong for a 6-drop.
Yes, this is very powerful. Nothing else to say.
I thought you were going to say I'm cutting it.
No,
I was like,
no, absolutely not. No.
Your time in Italy is worth
actually, I feel like this has dropped in price because I know we've talked about this in a past episode, and I thought it was like $7 or $8. So if it has dropped to $3.75, like this is a great time to pick one up because that'll probably be the cheapest it ever will be. Yes, if this was a commander, busted, disgusting. Oh my God.
It'd be bonkers.
Also, I think it would be fun if you did a house rule, made this your commander, but you had to build the entire deck Dimir Group Hug Landfall. Like where you're trying to find ways in Dimir to force your opponents to get more lands out of their library to the yard. That would be awesome.
That would be a challenge. That would be a deck that I don't know if I could do it.
But you know what? And I think if you figured it out, I think any play group would be like, yeah, you could have Sire of Stagnation to be your commander.
That works. Go ahead. I have to run nothing but bulk rares and other cards that are unplayable.
All right, guys. Well, that'll wrap up the hop section. Now we're going to head over to how the deck maybe wins in Yeast. Tuck, what are you talking about?
So there's 3 cards, 2 of which are, in my opinion, have-to-haves, and one of them is a little bit more on the spicy side. The first one is a card that I was very upset that got reprinted because this was up to $20. I should have offloaded it when I did. And in similar scope to the Labyrinth, it's got a round spherical object that when you look into, you may not be able to look away from. What? Mesmeric Orb, come on. Right. What? What other orb is on here?
I don't know.
2 colorless for an artifact. It's a rare. Leave me alone. I can't understand your esoteric nonsense. 2 colorless for an artifact for about $11 or $10. It used to be about $20, like I said. Whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller mills a card. And there is a little bit of flavor text in here, which is Sarash, Keeper of the Cowl, which is the old-timey gangster. Now, listen here, doll. A step in one direction, see, is 2 steps away from another one. What a boner.
What a boner.
I watched the original The Thing from 1951, and literally my dad was falling asleep and then had to come back out because he's like, wait a minute, rewind that. Did he just say boner? And there's a line in that's like, we don't want to make another boner like we did out on the ice.
Wow.
Woof. Yeah. So, Ms. Mirko, back to the non-ridiculous deep cuts. Very strong for a 2-drop. This has burned me in the past, if you're curious. But hopefully by the time you're getting this thing going, other people are going to be more mana dependent and more specifically creature attacking dependent. That's where this really comes up. For me, this is like a big deterrent against token decks, which I can't really answer. Like crazy artifact decks, can't really answer those either. And then hopefully in those mill cards that I'm coming off of my own, I might be able to hit something that I might be able to reanimate the Sire Stagnations of the world and whatnot.
I really like this card. It's interesting though, because so I believe Sir Nathan runs this as well, and it has done work. But honestly, when I look at it, I almost think of this as like an Altar of the Brood card, to where it's like, I guess you kind of just should put this in any deck because people are tapping lands, and they're just going to naturally have to mill 8 at their upkeep, or 10. Very much like Altar of the Brood. Like, I'm going to make everyone mill like a collective 9 to 10 on my turn because I'm going to play permanents. But I don't really run this card. I don't play it. And I think it's maybe because it also can mill me, and I don't like that.
Right.
But I did not know this was a $20 card.
Oh, yeah, it was. I'm surprised. This would be pretty good in your Oloro deck, right? Because a lot of that deck, you're building up your pillow fort, and then you're just like kind of passing and gaining life.
Yeah,
right?
That's fair.
But again, like, I don't know if you have any sort of self-recursion in that deck. Haven't seen that deck in 20 years, so who knows?
I haven't seen that deck since the Dust Bowl. All right. Well, my first one, I have died many times by this card. It's a stupid 1-drop from Zendikar. It is $26.
It's so
Blood Chief Ascension? What the hell? A single black enchantment? Can we agree that this is probably the best quest counter enchantment card out there?
Oh,
yeah, not even close?
Some assholes out there will say that the Angel one is on par with this. I disagree because you still have to pay mana to get it. And this just does it naturally.
So at the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, you put a quest counter on the Blood Chief Ascension. Whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Blood Chief Ascension has 3 or more quest counters on it, you may have that player lose 2 life. If you do, you gain 2 life. And it says a card, not whenever cards are put into an opponent's graveyard.
Right.
So if Mirko Voss mills you for 10, you're losing 20.
Yeah, it's bonkers. It's so stupid. It should be $400 so no one plays it. This sometimes doesn't play well because if people don't want to attack, then you're kind of like, all right, well, this is going to take 6 turns to turn around. How many decks do you think you've seen this in the wild?
Well, I mean,
more than 10?
I mean, probably, yeah.
For those who can afford it?
Yeah, because, I mean, I saw this more frequently when I was in Memphis at the card shop, and I think you're going to see this card more frequently at card shops that have a more tenured commander group because they have been playing for a long time. And I think that's a kind of a good rule if you kind of think about it. Other than the people that just have money to be able to go buy expensive cards, most people that have really expensive cards like this, it's either they've had their eye on it for a while, they've been saving up or trading towards it, or they just bought it a long time ago. Like, I think when I got my Blood Chief Ascension, it was probably like $6.
Sure.
$7, and now it's 27. I wouldn't pay 27 for it.
No.
But I got it on my Nicol Bolas deck, and hell yeah, I love it when I see it.
I think this was another one from former friend of the show, APB Out Tice, where this is something where they would open it in packs and like rip it up like Shouldreds. Like, oh great, Blood Chief. What a waste. I can't play this in standard.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Not good.
All right, Tuck. Well, what's your second one?
It's for a fraction of the cost, but in my opinion, well, actually, no, it's not even close to as good. But I do like this because it's a burst effect. I think the cards that do something where you don't have to wait around for a while in this deck are really valuable because you do get hurt pretty quick. And this one's going to grind you right in the brain. No? Really? Mind grind, baby, all day. X and a blue and a black dimir for a sorcery. Each opponent reveals cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals X land cards, then puts all cards revealed this way into his or her graveyard. X cannot be 0. So I have won with this card. I've done this card in response to just, I need to do it for 5 and see what happens. I've also done this card when I know I'm dying and I'm just going to make it difficult for everyone else. So for me, it fits all 3 categories of what I want my use to be. Can win you the game, can be used desperately, and can be used to very much annoy your opponents.
Yeah, I mean, this card's great. I wish it said basic land cards.
Oh my god!
Just to make it even more powerful. But Mind Grains, honestly, this is a card that if you're running a deck that can run Dimir, and you're doing infinite mana stuff like Torment to Hailfire, you should run Mind Grind. There's 0 reason why you shouldn't.
Yeah. Like in a Vial Smasher sort of build, you mean?
Yeah. Or even like my Atraxa, like this wouldn't be a terrible win con to have in there. Like, well, I can't win with Planeswalkers. I guess I'll Mind Grind for 100.
Right. Or when you do your big thing and then you do your Torment of Hellfire for 400, counterspell, and you're like, all right, well, what's next? I'll just tutor this up and just do it again and win on the spot. Yeah. Like it. I like where your head's at.
I mean, do you? Because I feel like if I did that against you, you'd be very mad.
If that exact thing happened where your Torment of Hellfire, your Exsanguinate both got counterspell, and you still had infinite mana, and then you busted this out, I'd be like, all right, yeah, like you got me with this.
Whatever.
One.
Here's exactly what Tuck could do. Oh, of course, you just went infinite again. All right. Well, my second one is actually a card I run in my Shirai deck, and I've seen this creature horror guilt my opponents into submission. Guilt Feeder, really, really good.
Yeah,
3 colorless, black, creature horror rare. It's a 0/4 for a little over $1. It has fear, so it can only be blocked by black creatures and artifact creatures. Whenever Guilt Feeder attacks and isn't blocked, defending player loses 1 life for each card in his or her graveyard. AKA, if Tuck plays this at his mid to late game, this could read, when it attacks and isn't blocked, defending player loses the game. Because you probably, in that mid to late game, probably have 25-ish cards in each opponent's graveyard.
I completely agree. And one thing that I think this card does well that I'm hoping to improve on is it actually deals damage, right? It doesn't mill. It actually deals real damage, which can be much more effective losing that life. Because I don't have a lot of cards in here. I have a lot of things that mill and deal with milling, but I don't have a lot of things that just deal raw damage as a creature.
Oh, okay. I was very confused. I was about to say, it doesn't deal damage. It's at 0 power. You just mean it helps lose life of your opponent.
Life, yeah.
Okay.
It deals it deals with life compared to graveyard as opposed to just graveyard compared to library. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
and I think
that's
something that's really that needs to be more present in this deck.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I mean, if you're in a deck that can consistently recur Guilt Feeder, like my Shirai deck can, or maybe a Marin or Carador, this is probably good for mid-range decks, even if you're not in a mill thing. Like, I do this, and I still get people for 7, 8, 9. That's not nothing.
Right. Yeah, and there's always going to be a target that you can just start bashing in for free.
And hey, if Altar of the Brood's in there, that's your spice package win con, baby.
2 cards.
All right, Tuck, give us your last Yeast card.
This would be the actual commander of the deck because it's a legendary creature, but it's way too dependent on your opponents, which I think we've started to realize we don't really love a lot of. Right? And I'm guessing this is not one you're choosing right now, but will be discussed at a later point.
I am cutting 1 legendary creature from your Yeast package in my bottle capping.
Is it a Kraken potentially?
I don't know.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Well, I want to talk about Rexel the Risen Deep. So 3 colorless, double blue and a black for a 5/8 legendary creature Kraken. That's a mythic and about $5. It's got Island Walk and Swamp Walk. Again, 2 of the most played colors in Commander. When it deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant and sorcery from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that card would be put into a graveyard this turn, exile it instead. I really like this card. I think it's cool. I like the artwork. It's totally Metal Man. It gives me a little bit of woodwork on it. But you have to. The deck that this is really good against are kind of rare. It doesn't help you with X spells. Doesn't really help you with extra turn spells. Doesn't help you with creature decks. And it kind of helps you with those like mid to late game big mana spell slingers, like the Jodas of the world, right? that's where this really shines. And that's why for me, I've always wanted to be the commander, and I even played it. And there's been a few times where I just won off commander damage because no one could block it. But I still like the card. I think it still has some gas to it. It's just very situationally dependent on who you're playing.
I 1,000% agree. This is one of the cards that, even though you're in a mill deck, I don't like this one because unlike Spell Twine, where I can still choose out of my own, this is only that player.
The other one, yeah.
This card doesn't even mill them, then have its effect. It's just what do they have in the graveyard at that time. So for me, Rexel is a little too telegraphed. Because unless you're going to be that guy at the EDH table with a pen and paper, okay, what went in your graveyard? And you're literally keeping notes. It's going to be like, okay, can I see everyone's graveyards? And
let's take a peek here. Yeah.
It's like, okay, Rexel's coming. Everyone panic. So I'm not a big fan of it. I actually was going to cut it, but I was like, this seems like another backup commander in the 99. I will say, if you're going to keep Rexel in, I know you own a copy, so you should get a playtest one for this deck. You should probably put Urborg in here, so that way you always have small block. Just something that simple, because we do have people, at least in our play group, that like to do the mono greens and your Boros colors and stuff like that.
Yeah, fair point.
All right. Well, my last one is a card that I actually wish was legendary, because it would be kind of like maybe a more consistent commander. So we're talking about Nemesis of Reason.
Interesting.
3 colorless dimir. It's a Leviathan horror, which really, looking at the picture, I would say dragon horror almost. It kind of reminds me of like those Chinese dragons from like old lore.
On the ground, yeah.
Yeah, it's a 3/7. It's a rare, between 250 and 350. Whenever Nemesis of Reason attacks, the defending player puts the top 10 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, and I do have flavor text.
Which is from our pal Hannah, Ship's Navigator, the Mad Hatter.
Words, Alice! Describing it fail! Pages relenting a shrivel. Tales recounting end! Would you like some tea?
Perhaps some tea.
So I like this card for your deck. I like that you always get that 10.
Yeah.
That's really, really nice. And this is more, I think, Tuck, your style when it attacks. You're being forced, but you can do it unprofitably to where if they have a 2/2 Drake, I'll do it and you still mill 10. I don't actually have to connect on the damage. But you could do weird builds where it's like Dimir extra combat. And like that could be kind of funny. So the only thing I will say this lacks is it needs some sort of evasion. But I think being on attack trigger and having a big butt is probably why they didn't go that route.
This card is one that I paid the iron price for. I think I bought this for $12, and now I at least have 1 or 2 lying around. I agree with all that, with all the parts on it. It is, I like that on the attack trigger. This is one that this is on the chopping block for me. And this was a hard pick. It was kind of between this and a couple other ones. But I'll get to why when we get to that section there. It is a very good card though.
All right.
And also this card has wrecked me in not 1, but 3 cubes that I played when I was in Fort Collins drink.
Good. Well, that's going to wrap up the yeast package. Now we're going to head over to Spice. Good. And I'll start it off with what I call, there's only 4 options. I'm going with the other backup commander. This is the one I actually think is the backup commander. Lazav Dimir Mastermind, a.k.a. the Godfather's Dimir deck. Double blue, double black, legendary creature shapeshifter. It's a 3/3. It has hexproof. Whenever a creature card is put into a opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you may have Lazav become a copy of that card, except its name is still Lazav. It's legendary in addition to its other types, and it still has hexproof with that ability. This, to me, is the perfect backup for your deck, but it's also very glass cannon because it has to be on the battlefield to see the stuff. It's not like at the beginning of your upkeep, Lazav becomes a copy of something from a graveyard. It needs to see it. And so if you've already done a lot of mill with Mirko Voss early in the game, and then you finally get to Lazav, it's like, well, I don't really have a big mill package now.
Right. Yes, I completely agree. This was actually the commander that inspired me to build this deck. A guy named Matt Sears, who I think you played with in Chicago. He's kind of a bigger guy with a beard, kind of a hipster. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Just described, 3/4 of the population of Chicago. He had one, and his was all effect mill, no creature mill, right? And it worked really well. The reason why I have this in Spice, like you said, it's like if you're playing someone who's playing elves, if people are just playing elves, pirates, and whatever, you're like, all right, whatever. But you always have the chance of hitting some monster card. I like the fact that it's hexproof. I think that's cute. But what are you gonna do?
All right, well, Tuck, give us your spice.
All right, we got one more.
I'm gonna guess. Let me take a guess at this. I think you're going to go with Breath Stealer's Crypt.
You are correct, sir, because this was talked about on an Action 4 Weatherlight report, and I bought 2 copies, or maybe 1, because it is a piece of Magic history. So, Breath Stealer's Crypt is an enchantment from Visions. 2 colorless, blue and a black, and it says, whenever any player draws a card, he or she reveals that card. If the card is a creature card, that player pays 3 life or discards the card. And this actually is a brand new voice from Talim Tor, which my mom, this is a Mother Tucker recommendation of Werner Herzog. Far too many soldiers have died in their beds. Damn it! I watched all that. Give me another shot on this. I just watched.
I was about to say you kind of sound like Trump.
No, you know who Werner Herzog is, right?
Nope. I actually thought you said Bernie Madoff at first.
What a cut! So in The Mandalorian, there's that old kind of German-sounding guy.
Oh yeah, that guy.
That's Werner Herzog. Yeah.
Oh okay.
All right, so. He's German, nihilist. You see in the chaos. Oh, God damn it. I just literally watched 5 minutes of this. All right, I'm just going to run through this again. You see in the creatures of the wild, I only see far too many soldiers have died in their beds. God damn it.
Just remember, whenever you're ready, just give Tyler a cue so he knows when to go back in.
Oh, no, that's all staying in. That's all staying in.
God.
So anyways, I put this in a spice mostly because it, again, whiffs if you're playing Spellslinger's decks. It can kind of burn you a little bit. I don't run too many creatures, but I do have a fair amount of draw stuff in it. And there's some strategy where you look at your card, you're like, oh, I don't want to pay 3 for that. I don't want to pay 3 for the Sire Stagnation. I'll put it in my graveyard and then animate it. The reason why it's in a spice is because, like you said, I don't have a ton of ways of doing that, and that's not really how the deck is like tuned to be built. That's like the second or third tier of how to do it. I mostly got it because it's a reserved list card. I bought it, and I want to put it in a deck and see how it goes. So far, have never seen it in action.
So here's the only thing I really think this card does for you, for this deck, is I think this is somewhat your answer for control players. Because I see the big thing holding you back in this deck is counter magic and bounce effects that you don't plan for. You spend all your mana on a resource and then they get rid of it. So Breath Stealer's Crypt is kind of like, and I'm drawing a blank on that. I think it's an artifact that makes all your opponents play with their hands revealed. Send triplet
telepathy.
Deck, telepathy. Yeah. So it's kind of like a slightly worse telepathy, but also kind of slightly better. Like, telepathy, it's always revealed. This, they just have to reveal it. But then if it's a creature, maybe it gets pitched away, which doesn't really help your control aspect. But I do think this does give you the knowledge of what am I going to be casting into. And then also, coincidentally, maybe I make people discard a few creature cards here and there.
Yeah. And I run a lot of creature removal, but this deck does struggle with like big creature decks. So if you're going to play that deck, you might as well have to pay the piper for it.
Yep.
So that's why it's in the spice.
All right. And now we're on to the bottle capping. And as a reminder, there's going to be BigTuck and Ice cuts and adds to the deck that are going to be under $5, under $50, and a no budget recommendation. We just can't talk about mana only lands. So under $5, I will want to know, did you stick by your rule and not cut any spice? Or did you actually put some on the chopping block?
I'm not cutting any spice this time around, luckily. I will be cutting one of the quote unquote backup commanders. We've talked around him this entire session, if you will, this entire therapy. I'm going to cut Phoenix, God of Deception.
I am too.
Are you really? Okay, nice. So 3 colorless, a blue, and a black for legendary enchantment creature god. It's a 4/7 indestructible. As long as your devotion to blue and black is less than 7, it's not a creature. And as creatures you control have tap, target player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, X's this creature's toughness. Great card, great mill strategy. Does not work when you have 10 creatures in the entire deck.
Well, you have 17 apparently,
well, that's
or at least what the counter says.
Yeah.
But I actually had the same thought. I mean, I only run Phanex in my Aloro deck because he's an indestructible blocker, and I'm such a pillow fort. It's like the mill's kind of nice, but it's really just there. If you're in a mill deck and you don't have big butts or way of making big butts or even ways of making lots of tokens, you only have one token producer in the entire deck.
Yeah, exactly.
And that only makes tokens if you're attacking with zombies, which you only have one of in the deck.
Correct.
So,
yes.
It's just, Phanex just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm curious what you decided to replace it with.
Well, I was going to put in something, but
oh, God, you know who you just reminded me of? You sounded like the old fuck from Scrooged that was Bill Murray's boss when he came back dead.
When he shoves him out of the thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I am putting in, it's finally dropped down to way below what I thought was going to be affordable. Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Colorless and a blue for sorcery. Each opponent exiles from the top of their library until that player has exiled cards with total mana value 20 or more. So again, one thing I've noticed is I really want that burst kind of mill exile. And granted, this isn't necessarily a mill, but I think this card's going to hit a lot of cards for multiple opponents. If this said player, unplayable in Commander, in my opinion. But the fact that it's each opponent, I think you're going to hit a lot of good value in here. And for 3 mana, it just seems like it's a very efficient way of doing so.
So I know like our Facebook group has been talking about this card, especially with like the Ashok, I think that got, or no, it wasn't the Ashok. It's that other legend that gets the power or can play.
It's the Nightmare Horror guy.
Yeah, there we go. So I know a lot of people are kind of talking about Tasha's with that. The whole total mana value of 20 or more, like, I like the card, and I think the mana cost is fair at 3. Just the total mana value of 20 or more, that scares me. Just Commander has so many big mana stuff to where you maybe only get 3 or 4 cards off of someone. And it's like, okay, was it worth 3 mana to maybe get rid of 12 cards that have a combined 60 mana of value?
Right.
Maybe.
I
just don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think there is one thing, because I think that's an argument a lot of people in Commander make, right? Like, this isn't Legacy where you're going to hit half their deck, right, or all of it. But I do think that the Commander cards that are higher in Commander and in cost generally are going to be the good ones, right? Like the Blightsteel Colossi of the world, that sort of thing. So even if you're only hitting 3 cards, if they're all like critical to the game plan, that might be worth it. I've not seen this card played outside of Bosch and Roll. Stay tuned. His streams, but he only plays 60 card formats.
Sure. Well, and the other thing I have an issue with this card in your deck is that unless we're going away from wanting stuff in our opponent's graveyards, like the exile thing kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So, that's not going to help your Sepulchral Primordial. It's not going to help your Diluvian Primordial.
Right. Reanimates of the world. Sure.
Yeah. So once again, it's a very interesting card. I think you have some design space, but we've already kind of said, like, well, you had this makeshift, like, well, I want to mill, and then I want them to mill, and I kind of want stuff from my yard specifically, but then their yard. And, okay, well, maybe let's go more on the opponents.
Right,
now
right.
It's we're not really milling. It's like, oh, well, now we're kind of exiling, so do I even want to be able to pull from my opponent's
Does it even matter, right?
Do I just want to focus on mill to exile? Maybe that's, like, my stitch, or skip, whatever, however you say it. So that's the only thing. I'd be interested, though, to hear about it. But I don't know if you want to spend $4 on a card if this is only the only deck you could have a home for it with.
Yeah, it's hard. I just like this card a lot. It was like the first card previewed from that set that I was wrong about. So I'll probably end up with a copy, and we'll see what happens with it.
That's fair. All right. Well, like I said, I was cutting the exact same card we already talked about the reasons. And I mentioned it earlier. Tuck, you got... I wanted to start kind of putting this deck in a direction that maybe fits your new play group, fits your play style, and you have a few different cards in here that deal with combat damage. When they attack, a thing happens. So I think if we take out that Phoenix and put in Fire Shrieker, we can actually start to make the deck a little bit more fun, and it's not just mill. So Fire Shrieker's 3 colorless artifact equipment. You can get one for about 30 cents. Equip for 2, and equip creature has double strike. So when we start kind of looking at your different cards, Mirko Voss would trigger twice.
Right.
That is absolutely
that's insane.
You go down...
Rexel, that's combat damage, right? You get 2 triggers off of that.
There you go. So I think there's a lot of different things. And then even your Undead Alchemist, you would get extra combat things off of that. So I believe there is a build of this deck. Now, there's not a lot of ways to do double strike and Dimir. I looked it up.
Oh, boy.
But I think there's like one other equipment that you can do. So, but if you wanted to kind of do this thing to almost like, hey, I'm going to use my tutor package to get Fire Shrieker, and then I'm going to be living in the red zone, but now I'm getting these extra effects with the double strike, that could be interesting and different. It's not just Mirko Voss mill you until you have no cards. It's, hey, I'm trying to like maybe kill you off of command damage. I'm going to try to mill you out of your library.
I dig it, and it actually plays perfectly into my last pick about dealing dealing damage, which I think is very important.
Nice. Well, let's go to under 50. What are you cutting?
I'm cutting Guild Lotus. I have grown to hate this card. I don't like it anymore. It's still $5. I think I have like 10. So at some point, I just need to go and offload them. 5 colorless, tap for 3 mana.
Be careful, though. We talked about you doing that with Soul Ring, and by the time you did it, they were worth nothing.
I know. I should have done it immediately. That's what I'm saying. I should do it now. It's fine. It's whatever. I think now, like, I don't have an Arcane Signet in here. I have a Talisman of Dominance. There's just better mana rocks at this rate.
Sure.
But I'm not cutting it for that. I'm cutting it for a slam dunk card this is one, speaking of waiting on price, I am very glad I waited and didn't pre-order or buy. Bruvac Grandiloquent, kind of have to have it in here. So 2 colorless and a blue. If the opponent would mill 1 or more card, they mill twice that many cards instead. And it is plummeted in price to $15, which is still a lot. But the effect is so good. It doesn't matter if I'm still... MrCombo is giving me a weird face right now. It's like a mix between Kermit the Frog and a jack-o'-lantern. This deck is still a mill deck no matter how many times you cut it, right? If we just keep the commander and they'll get no further cards, this is going to start adding up very, very quickly. So for me, if you're playing a dedicated mill deck, you kind of have to have Bruvac, which is why he's $15.
Except you don't.
You don't like it?
No, I don't like it for your deck. If you notice, you actually don't have that many things that I believe would constitute as mill for Bruvac. A lot of it's reveal from the top of your library until you get this, put that into your graveyard. That is not mill.
Oh, interesting.
Just like how put the top card of your library into your hand is not draw. So I'm looking at Consuming Aberration. I'm looking at Mirko Voss. Right now, the only things that you have in your deck that are actual mill would be Phoenix, Ruin Crab, Fleet Swallower. Well, no, because Fleet Swallower. So that one would be a mill. There was one other one. It was the one I talked about earlier that you were going to cut. The Nemesis. That would be a mill.
Mesmeric, Mime Grind. I don't know. I think there's a fair amount in here.
And then Undead Alchemist would be another. So it's just, you're going to have to be very careful. I think you really need to go through and actually kind of make a pile. What do you actually have that's mill? And I would say this, Tuck, whatever your total number of things that put things into graveyards from top of library, like whatever that total number is, you probably need 50% of that pile to be things that actually constitute as mill to justify Bruvac. because he's expensive, and it's literally, you don't want to have him in the deck for 5 cards.
5 cards, yeah. That's a fair point. I actually didn't think about that. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I have to just do some researching.
Ooh, there you go. All right. For me, I'm cutting Body Double.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, Body Double, 4 colorless blue, Shapeshifter, 0/0. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature card in a graveyard. It's fine, but it's boring, and I wanted to give you a flavor.
Ooh.
So, it's a mechanic I've wanted to see played in a deck for years, because it completely ripped off Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think we have a deck that finally makes it work. Archive Trap.
Oh,
3 colorless blue. Instant trap, it's a rare. Target opponent puts the top 13 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. But here's where I think this is actually going to work well for you. It's $23. It's very expensive. If an opponent searched his or her library this turn, you may pay nothing rather than pay Archive Trap's mana cost. I talked a little bit earlier about why I like that one Dimir card, and I think the control decks are the ones that are going to hurt you. What do control decks also usually do? They usually tutor to the top of the library, Mystic Tutor, whatever, Vampiric. And the nice thing is that since it doesn't say, you may reduce it by 3, so then it's a blue, it's free. So it being completely free, you're going to have people that are like, oh, did my tutor resolve? Awesome. To the top, I'm fine. Hey, for free, mill the top 13, and now you just milled the card you tutored. Or it could be something to where Kozilek's in the graveyard, triggers on the stack, you're so close to milling them, let me go ahead and even if I have to pay 5, I'm going to instant speed mill you for 13 and hopefully get you below what you needed. So I think this card actually has a ton of utility in your deck.
Yeah, it's really good. This was on the list for me as well. It's literally on the list, which is kind of funny there, which explains why it's $24. That's a lot to spend. but it is a very, very good card and a great inclusion, especially because I hate people who tutor. So it does fit me on that.
And this is a card that I actually believe, depending on your play group, if your play group is a tutor to the top of the library type group, or even top deck manipulation, Archive Trap could probably see play in a lot of your blue decks where Counterspell is. Yeah. It's like, what am I putting in here? Cyclonic Rift, Rhystic Study, Counterspell, and Archive Trap. It could have a home like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. So maybe I'll see if I can find it in Japanese.
No budget. What did you cut? What did you add?
So I'm cutting Nemesis of Reason, as I talked about, mostly just because I like it a lot. I just don't like.
I'm cutting it because I really like it.
Yeah, exactly. I hate it. This was a card I was really excited to get in the deck, and it just has kind of always underperformed. And I think one of the reasons why, I'm cutting it for a card that does something. It's also combat focused, which works very well in your double strike combat thing. But this card actually can get huge and deal damage. So I don't know if this is going to be a winner or not. But I think the Haunt of Hightower could be an interesting inclusion. So 4 colorless, double black for legendary creature vampire, flying lifelink. When it attacks, defending players discards the cards. And then whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a 1/1 counter on the Haunt of Hightower. So it's a little, for me, obviously this is like a big juicy target, right? Like this, it's cost 6 mana. That's a lot for this deck. I already talked about how I don't have it. But why I like this is because this is another card in similar scope to Guilt Feeder that deals with life, right? You're attacking the life, not the library. And sometimes someone's playing a Kozilek, like you said, right? So even if you mill them a gazillion times, they just monster mash and then you go back to it. And you're stuck in that trap, which has happened before. This thing is going to get humongous. It has lifelink and it has evasion on it. So for me, I'm interested. It's $5. It probably won't see play in maybe any other deck, but I'm interested to see if that will matter and if there'll actually be in vampire decks, you mean?
Yeah, I was about to say you might want to buy this now because I bet you this will probably spike.
Oh yeah, there's
so many. I would almost say any legendary, rare, or how about this? Any vampire that's probably rare or mythic. You probably want to take a hard look at it to see if you just need to buy it now, because it's not. It's right now will be the cheapest it will be for probably a couple years.
Yeah, for sure. So that's why it kind of fills in the same slot as Nemesis Reason, but again, is attacking the life total, not the library.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think for me this is fine. It's a little too targetable for my taste. Like I talked to that whole soliloquy around Lightninggreaves. This is another one that it's like, it hits, people aren't going to let you keep it there because of what your deck does. Because very easily, this thing could go from a 3/3 to a 33/33, and you just had in a turn, and then you're just one-shotting people and gaining 33 life. So this has a massive ceiling, but its floor is I play it, you immediately remove it, and I don't know if 6 mana is where you want to be investing a removal spell bait card.
Good point. And again, if this was, I think this card would get a lot better if this was more self-mill, because you could get it earlier before people kind of have their defenses up. But again, like you said, I think the deck stretched a little thin in that regard.
Yeah. All right. We're on to me and the last card. And I actually really like this card, but I like the card I found better. Thief of Sanity. I'm going to cut that. So
wow, two spices, he says.
Yeah, colorless dimir, creature specter. It's a 2/2. Not related to Regina Spectre. It is a rare flying. Whenever Thief of Sanity deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 3 of that player's library, exile one of them face down, then put the rest into the graveyard. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may look at it, you may cast it, which is key, and you may spend mana as though mana of any type to cast that spell. The reason I'm getting rid of this card, I liked playing this in Standard because it was kind of my card draw or ramp in that kind of format. Right. Commander, because so many things are one-ofs, most people's decks, 35% of the whole thing is lands.
Right.
And it says cast, not play. If it said play, I would leave it in, but the fact that you could get lands and literally not be able to use them would suck.
Yeah,
So, I found a card. It's a little risky, and it is a little bit more on the you getting milled piece. But from Odyssey for 57 cents, Charmed Pendant, I think is very interesting. 4 colorless artifact. It's a rare. Tap. Mill a card. For each colored mana symbol in the milled card's mana cost, add 1 mana of that color. Activate anytime you could do an instant. And then they do give you, for example, if the card's mana cost is 3 generic blue, blue, black, you would get blue, blue, black to your mana pool. And I went through your cards, and you actually have a lot of cards with double pips in the mana thing. So basically, this to me is a mana rock that many times will at least get you 1, but it could get you 2 or 3 or 4. I mean, hell, you mill Lazav, that's 4 mana to your mana pool right there. Now, you're going to have to figure out your strategy around how much are you milling yourself versus your opponents. This is more on, I guess, the milling yourself piece. But I think this is kind of cool flavor-wise. And 50 cents, if this doesn't work, you probably have other decks that you could probably test this out in.
Hey, I'll make it even easier for you. I'll just cut Gilded Lotus for this in a heartbeat. No questions asked.
So when you talked about Gilded Lotus and you're going to cut it, I wanted to jump in and be like, ooh, one of my ads will actually be better than that. But I was like, no, that's fine. So have you ever seen this card before?
I think I've seen it. It's been in like recommended cards in the deep down dungeon of it. I've never seen it in live, but I think like it's such a low barrier for entry. I kind of like 57 cents to take a risk on it. And if you're playing something that's only graveyard matters, sure, why not, right? Like you get your Woodfall Primus and you get 3 mana back for it.
And here's a cool thing, Tuck, because this is colorless and that's just reminder text. It doesn't mean it has to be in a Dimir deck.
Right.
If you still had I think you still have it, your Re-End deck, don't you?
Re-End?
Wasn't that the one that you built off of the Commander Smiths? Whenever your stuff dies, it can all come back if it has like the pips.
I got rid of that deck. That deck was terrible.
Okay.
Well, the only good part of that deck was you holding the table hostage with Nova Blastworm for like the entire game. That was awesome.
But a deck like that is where I think Charm Pendant could also be really good. It just so happens you built your deck to where you have a lot of the pips. But there are people that build decks with, I always have to have 2 different colored pips or 3 different colored pips in there because I'm looking to do the multicolored route. Charm Pendant, can't believe I haven't seen this card played in those other decks because it seems like, do this. I just added 3 mana to my mana pool. Great.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot, man. Coming in to a TCG order near you.
Well, guys, thanks for making it until the end. And if you really like the episode, leave that 5-star review, leave some positive feedback, and make sure you subscribe and follow. If you'd like to get a hold of the cast to let us know how we're doing, here's how you can do that. You can reach me at MrComboNumber5 on Twitter, all spelled out except for the 5. BigTuck, where could they reach you?
You can still reach me at BigTuck tweeting on Twitter. And I did wish Matthew McConaughey a happy birthday this week. Mr. Duffman did point out that it's unlikely that it's the same Matthew McConaughey because this looks like a heavyset gentleman from maybe New Jersey. But still, I'm sure he still appreciated it.
Oh, I'm sure he absolutely appreciated it. You can reach our main account at CMD Tower on Twitter as well. Also, we will have the article posted online, cmdtower.com/BNBE113. You'll be able to see our cuts, our ads, a link to the deck. And of course, if you have any comments, you can leave them there. Basically, though, all you have to type in is consuming aberration, morphic pool, dimir, Doppelganger, tower.com. Now, if you would like to, of course, let our amazing audio and video producer for Brews and Builds know what kind of a good job he did, hit him up on Twitter at _tcoats. Tyler does all the Brews and Builds editing for CMD Tower, YouTube, the graphics, the artwork, the audio pieces. He's now doing all the effects. So if there's things that you would like to see done differently, please let us know. Now, if you would like to help us out financially, so that way we can constantly improve the content, head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/CMDTower. We have the 4 different tiers. The mid tiers are only $5 and $15 a month, but you actually get a bunch of really cool swag from it, plus continual swag throughout the year. The big hot one, though, is we do have a limited number of CMD Tower holiday sweaters. I think we're getting a total of 80, and once they're gone, they're gone. We'll maybe do a different design next year, but we're gonna kind of pilot this out, see if everyone likes them. But here's the cool thing, guys. One of these sweaters, and they're insanely soft, really good quality. They're $50, but if you're a patron, you get it for $30. We're giving you a $20 discount for literally joining. So you could then, in theory, join our dollar entry level to get access into the Discord and be able to engage with our community for $1 a month. And that $20 just paid for 20 months of access to our Patron, that money that you saved. So it's a great opportunity to be able to save some money, support the channel, and be able to further grow our community. Now, if you're an existing patron and you would like to refer a friend, a frenemy, or colleague even to join the collective, be sure that they reach out to us on Patreon and let them know what member actually referred them so we could send you a little thank you. Now, if you don't want to join our patron community, but maybe you see that holiday sweater and you're like, man, that thing is fire, you can head over to our store, cmdtower.com/merch. We sell our playmats, we sell our sleeves, our coins, our reminder tokens, all the good stuff on there. And please, there is a redacted bit that I am obligated to not talk about. So, BigTuck, Mirko Voss, the deck drinker. How do you feel about the deck? And do you think maybe there's some tweaks coming in the future?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway I have from here, it's not a deck I'm going to take apart because there's really nowhere to do with the cards, right? Like, I don't have another mill deck, so I might as well just keep it together. I think it does really need to get narrowed down to, do I even care about me milling? And if so, what cards can I cut out to not worry about that, right? Like, I think that's a big thing. And I think, like, there's some things like the Charm Pendant, which I think is cute enough to keep in. I think that's a great inclusion. But getting back to the combat thing, I think is really big. And just really trying to narrow down, do I even care about my own graveyard or just opponents?
Yeah, and I think actually, Tuck, once you figure that out, like, I know we did our own cuts for the bottle capping, but most likely, once you figure out, like, what is your focus? Opponent mill or self mill, and then you cut out the cards that don't make sense once you've picked the direction, you're probably going to cut like 10 cards, 12 cards.
Yeah, exactly.
That's your bottle capping right there. Plus now you have extra space to maybe start, do you want to do extra combat? Like, is there a way you could do that in Dimir? Like, would that be kind of cute? Or, do I want it to be Fire Shrieker, like double strike? I am getting something double strike And that's how I want to win the game. Like, okay, what can I do to support that? I think and that's kind of what I noticed with my Aloro. Once I got away from the 13 themes of Azor, or not Azorius. Oh God,
Esper. There you
are. The 13 themes of Esper in there, and I got it narrowed down to just the primary 2. The deck it flowed a lot better. I had a lot more open spots. So I think this could see an evolution. And then next time you and I talk about it, it's like, yeah, I actually kind of enjoy it because now I don't feel like I'm being stretched into 4 different corners. I just got like a couple ways I'm going.
Yeah, I agree. So looking forward to getting those cuts and hopefully turning this into a deck that makes the rotation a little bit more.
And it'll be exciting because once this episode comes out, it'll be 1 week away from the Drinkathon. Dun, dun, dun!